Are you ready to get real? Welcome to real estate, the world's loneliest career, where you're always out of balance, unfulfilled, the role models are fake, the numbers unattainable, and you're just supposed to be and do it all. Join self-made millionaire real estate agents, wives, moms, and business owners as we level up, learn from special guests, and elevate and disrupt an entire industry through real education our way.
Hi, everybody. We are so excited today because we are here with Troy Fullwood, who is the man who is going to give us many answers on what is happening in the world. Troy has been in the field of investments and mortgages and distressed assets for over 26 years, and he's recognized as one of the industry's top investment professionals. He's spoken at financial conferences for Harvard Business School, for NASDAQ, for the Kingdom Real Estate. And his wife and Troy run together Pinnacle Investments out of Canton, Ohio. And they are working as hard as they can to live out their life by design, which I see on your shirt, which I really love. So, Troy, we are so excited to have you today because obviously there's a lot going on in the world, and it seems as if it's changed very quickly.
Yes.
Does it feel that way to you as well?
Yes and no, but yeah, I understand. I can appreciate the feeling. I can appreciate the feeling, but for me, like the writing's been on the wall for the last 2 years as it is, and so. But we can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have listeners that are all over the board as far as how long they've been in real estate, their experience level, all of that jazz. But regardless of experience level, I feel like maybe there's a lot of people, most people in the industry don't really understand what's happening. I feel like it shifted quickly, and I feel like people either are screaming from the mountaintops that, like, the sky is falling and we're all going to die and it's absolutely horrible. And then you've got the other half of people that are screaming everything's fine, nothing has changed. And it's just this really weird dialogue that I feel like all the real estate agents are having with each other. So what do you feel is going on in the market right now, and what caused this shift?
Well, I mean, the blessing and the curse of real estate, from a realtor's perspective or from an investor's perspective, is always that every market is unique to its own characteristics as a whole. I was actually just having this conversation last night with a good friend of mine who owned one of the largest private title companies in Arizona. And he sold that back in the last, turn, which is 08, 09 era. And made a lot of money and has retired and owns now rental properties and just kind of does his own thing. But we were talking about things last night in regards to the fact that obviously the refi market has cooled off quite a bit. That's a byproduct of higher interest rates, mortgage rates, and that kind of goes with the territory. You've got the sales have cooled off a little bit, but I don't think they've cooled off from a standpoint of people don't want to buy. I think people are trying to figure out, okay, where do we land? It's like trying to catch a falling knife. And so some people are okay trying to catch that falling knife while it's falling. Some people want to wait till it hits the ground and then figure out, if it bounces or not. And that's a byproduct of people's economic strength in the marketplace. Everybody always wants to buy everything at a discount. I mean, I can tell you what, I live my entire life buying things at a discount. We buy assets at a discount all the time. And to be frankly honest with you, we even buy our groceries at a discount. Like, if you want to know what we're having around our house, see what's on sale at the grocery store, because that's what we're eating. It's just food at the end of the day. And we eat good, don't get me wrong. But it's one of those things where you just have to manage your money differently. So my take on the current marketplace is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And that is the higher interest rates, even though they're higher than what we've been used to for the last 2 or 3 years, are not necessarily all-time highs by any stretch of the imagination. It's taken people that were looking at, say, $800,000 houses, and now they're looking at like a $600,000 house to stay within debt to income ratios and things of that nature. The folks in the marketplace that were getting away with selling houses that were 20 years old and hadn't been updated and getting a premium for it because somebody wanted to be in that zip code or that neighborhood, they're not getting away with that anymore. People are saying, no, I work too hard for my money. I want my money to go further, and I want more of a turnkey versus they were buying at a premium and then they were willing to throw $50,000 to $100,000 into it to make it their own. Though that kind of buyer has taken a step back. My sister, she works for Lennar Homes, which is actually my brother-in-law and my sister both work for Lennar Homes. And I was talking to her a couple of weeks ago, and we were chatting about what Lennar's strategy is. And even though their buyers list has dropped off quite a bit, so they don't have this long buyers list like a lot of home builders have had for the last couple of years, they still see it being a very strong market. They're still buying land to develop it, turn it into neighborhoods, and that's a subset of the fact that there's just not enough housing in America. People are, people keep having babies turn into kids turn into adults turn into marriages, and it just kind of has that cycle. So you're going to continue to see people pour into the marketplace wanting to buy houses, whether it's a first-time home buyer buying a $100,000 home or, somebody, leveling up. So that's just some basic stuff that I've seen, but Lennar's not backing off. I know that some of the builders that had long, waiting list, I would say a comfortable buyer's pool. Now they're going to have to start treating the industry better. I know they've treated the realtor market or the realtor sector of the market. They shunned them, when the market was strong because they didn't need realtors. Now they need realtors. And whether a realtor goes back to a home builder or not, that's I think a personal choice in how they were treated as a whole. But the fact that we just have a huge shortage of homes, housing supply across the country, people are still going to be buying at the end of the day. We sold our house in Gilbert, Arizona we closed on it April 18th of this year. We bought a house and so let me back up. I'll tell you a little backstory on that. So we bought it in September of 19. We put about $100,000 into it. It was a beautiful house when we bought it, but we made it our own type thing. Put in hardwood floors and all the latest and greatest color schemes and all that stuff. And we sold it for $1.3 million in April of this year. We turned around and bought a house here in Canton, Ohio, in the number 3 rated school district in the country. And we picked up a house. By the time we're all in, we're into it for $1 million. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, we've got another 20% equity that we picked up along the way. So when people say the market's going up and it's going down, yeah, it's doing all that, but it always is doing all of that. It's always, the comfortable ride of going up is not guaranteed right now. I was sharing, I was talking to my friend last night. He said, well, how's the market there? And I said, it's not even like phased. It's still building. I mean, they're still building houses around me. I live in a neighborhood that's, 7-figure homes all around me. And they broke ground on 5 new homes in the last 2 months around here. So people are still doing what they're doing. It maybe the people buying in this neighborhood were looking at a $1.5 million. Now they're looking at $1 million home. So you're still seeing that. Are things selling within 24 hours of being on the market? No, that's not happening here either. The nicer homes are selling 70 to 3 to 5 days. There's still a buyer out there looking for the nicer home, but they're more demanding of it. They're not willing to just buy a home to buy it and then deal with the rehab part of it. They're like, no, if I'm spending this money, I want it to be turnkey and find me a turnkey house, and they'll wait a little bit longer for it. But that's kind of a summary of what I see happening across the country. I mean, rental properties are still available. There's still good deals in that market. You have to look a little bit more for it, but I still think the realtor market, the best thing I think the realtors can do in the marketplace is really educate themselves on how they can help their clients and provide, you know, just really good insight and wisdom to what they're doing. Like help them get the most for their money in this marketplace, because it's turning to a buyer's market. There's no doubt about it. It's turning to a buyer's market.
So you made a post the other day about the difference between the Fed and mortgage rates. And I think that this is a super common misnomer, misunderstanding point in A, for real estate agents, and then B, because they pass along incorrectly to the general public. So if you could explain what it means when the Fed meets, what it means when the Fed raises their rate, and then how that trickles down or affects mortgage rates, and the fact that they're two different things, that would be really cool.
Yeah. So my post centered around, it's titled, two financial worlds that drive our economy. And the post centered around the prime lending rate, which is a commercial lending rate. So when the feds are doing a prime lending rate, what they're saying is, hey, all these major corporations, banks, institutions, and everything else that are borrowing our money to put out in the marketplace, we want more of a return for our money. So we're going to put it out there at, that rate. Right now it's about a 4%, but they are getting ready to bump it tomorrow. And my guess is they're going to probably bump it 0.5%. So 50 basis points in the marketplace. They're doing that. Now this is the lie. This is the flat out lie, because this is what also creates inflation. So they're doing that to quote unquote slow inflation. Okay. The truth is when corporations buy or borrow money at a higher percentage rate to manufacturing corporations, the Amazons of the world and all of these other corporations that are very cash rich, but they're not spending their own cash. They're just borrowing capital because it's a better tax deduction. It's a better tax play for them. When they do that, obviously they're paying a higher cost of capital, which ultimately has to be fed into their system, which ultimately trickles down to the consumer, whoever the consumer is buying that product. Hence,
so Amazon's commercial rate is raised by the Fed, and then whatever it is, the dog toy that you're buying on Amazon goes up in cost to you, the consumer, because Amazon's cost to do business is higher.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so so this is where the lie comes in, like, hey, we're going to raise the rate. That's going to slow down the economy, which is going to bring down inflation. Well, in fact, it's not doing that. It has absolutely the exact opposite.
Yeah, because the dog toy on Amazon just got way more expensive, right?
Yeah. I mean, even when it went up 10 cents or 20 cents a toy or a pair of jeans or a television or whatever it is, whatever major corporations borrowing money to manufacture products, that's what it is. Even the small business owners out there getting $500,000 lines of credit or $50,000 lines of credit, whatever it is to build their company, that cost of capital gets, moved through their system and ultimately ends up, on the consumer level that we have to write that check. So that's that's one aspect of the industry. So you've got your prime lending rate.
Explain just for a quick second. Sorry. Explain why, like, what's the thinking process behind that would actually curb inflation? Does that make sense?
Well, the fact that Janet Yellen came out and said, oh, sorry, I was wrong the last 3 times. So expect an apology from her next week or in 30 days. Go, yeah, I missed that one again. It's like, it's a misnomer that the feds, they're basically lying about it is what they're doing. And some Americans are absorbing the lie and saying, yeah, that's, sorry, we'll accept your apology. But the truth is when you're in the capital side of it, that cost has to be passed on to something, I mean, you can only take it out of the profit margin so long, but if your cost of assembling goods keeps going up, like even a car, when General Motors borrows money from the feds, there's a higher cost to building that car, and so on and so on, and all the moving pieces. So to me, I think it's just poor leadership at the top is what it boils down to. And there's a method to their madness. Trust me, there's a method to their madness, and Americans will pick up that cost. But unfortunately, it's not going to be wealthy Americans, people making, say, 6 figures a year. And there's a growing percentage of 6-figure earners that are living paycheck to paycheck, which is pretty scary because they're getting into that tipping point of being over leveraged on their income. But unfortunately, back to my original point, unfortunately, that's going to trickle down to renters and first-time home buyers that are, when they say they're being priced out of the market, they're being priced out of the market because they're on a fixed income, and they're whatever that income is now. All of a sudden, that they were able to qualify for a $250,000 house. Now it's turned into a $175,000 house, and the question is, can I find a $175,000 house in the market? It depends on the market, at the end of the day.
So the Fed raises the interest rate to the commercial rate to corporations. And then how does that affect mortgage rates? Because the first thing that everybody hears when they hear a Fed rate is that mortgage rates are going to go sky high, right? So how do those two affect each other?
Well, they don't. And that's where the misnomer comes in. So the Fed rate is a commercial rate for commercial lending. Where the mortgage rates come into play is they're tied to the 10-year treasury. So as the 10-year treasury goes up, then your mortgage rates will go up. Now, ironically, what's happened over the last 5-6 months, if you put two graphs right next to each other, you'll see where the U.S. Treasury has been going up slowly, and so has the Fed commercial rate or the Fed rate. So we're at a very unique time in history where they can create a lot of confusion in the marketplace for people who are trying to create clarity around what they should do next. And they're jumbling it all together, and they're not clarifying any portion of it. So the Fed rate is a commercial rate for commercial lending, like commercial buildings. I mean, in the world of real estate, if you're buying a commercial building, then you need to pay attention to the Fed rate, because the bank that's lending you money to buy that warehouse or that shopping center or that apartment complex, whatever it may be, that's going to be at a higher rate. If you're out buying, and even like commercial property or investor properties, say, duplexes or rental homes and things like that. Now, if you're out buying an owner-occupied SFR, then you need to pay attention to the 10-year treasury. And it was up to about 3.2, 3.3, and now it's down to about 2.9. So it is dropping a little bit, which is good, which is a good thing. It'll continue to drop being so this is an election year. It's a midterm election year. Both sides want to win at the end of the day, and so they need some campaign, flags to wave on, and this is the, for lack of better words, the left's way of creating some flags that they can wave. And I don't want to get into politics, so don't DM me, don't message me, don't Facebook and say, well, as far as I'm concerned, both sides of the bird are as crooked as can be, and we're just the folks in the middle who take the whipping.
But we've won. There's been some chatter about that, like, because we are going into a midterm. Do we raise these rates up really high and then drop them back down to look like it's a win? Do you think? I mean, there is market manipulation, regardless of what your political stance is, all the time, right? Yes. So there are a lot of people who are waiting for either the market to crash or waiting for rates to go back down. So, in your opinion, is that part of what we're seeing? Are they going to bring them up super high and then drop them closer to midterms?
I think they're about as high as they're going to get right now. I think from here on out, you're going to see everybody's going to start campaigning. I mean, a lot of candidates have already started campaigning, but you're going to really see folks from the House and the Senate really get on their campaign trail. August is typically the last working month in DC on an election year. So any bills that are in front of the Senate and the House, they're going to get wrapped up in the month of August. And then from that point on, whoever is out there campaigning for reelection is really going to hit the campaign trail. So, and they need that. So here we are at the tail end of July. We're going to be going into August next week. So all that stuff is going to complete itself, for lack of better words, and then they're going to focus. So they need those flags to wave. So I think it's as high as it's going to be, at least for this year. I think because obviously the Democrats want that on their side of the conversation, and they want to try and push away. You're already seeing gas prices come down, so you're starting to see some things go down, which is all designed to, make us forget,
Right.
At the end of the day. I think we're much smarter than that as Americans. I think the fact that this cycle, this idea has happened multiple times, especially if you're, an adult in your 40s or something, you've seen the cycle. So you're not falling for what I call the banana in the tailpipe trick again. Like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. So you learn, you live and you learn. But I don't see it going any higher. I see things leveling out, coming down a little bit, softening a little bit. The supply chains are starting to loosen up a little bit, which is really a big part of what's caused inflation, supply and demand. Americans are masters at spending money, and we're really good at being consumers. We consume a lot of stuff. And so you're starting to see supply chains kind of start flowing again and that type of stuff. So when that happens, you're going to see prices coming down on things, which is good. Housing cost, you're not going to see the prices come down on houses. There's a clawback factor to corporate America. And when the lumber mills and all that have gotten prices where they're at, and the owners of those lumber mills have gone out and now they've started building that 18,000 square foot house that they've been planning on for the last 2 years, their last 10 years, and now they can build in the last 2 years. They're not gonna let that profit go. Matter of fact, it's just the owner of the home builder, the owner of the company that built our home that we live in here in Canton. He was actually at my house this morning. We were talking about this stuff. He says, I've been building houses for 25 years. And every time material cost goes up, it never goes back down. Never. Lumber, concrete, stucco.
Why would we talked about that on the show? Like, why would it? Once you are aware that you can sell a product for that price, unless something absolutely, truly catastrophic does happen, why would you bring it back down?
Exactly. And you can call it a monopoly, you can call it whatever you want, but at the same time, there's demand. And you and I may not be in the market to build a new house, but our neighbor is, and so our neighbor will pay the price. But somebody's going to pay that price to get what it is they want, and so you're just not going to see that. You're just not going to see that go backwards. Cost of land going up, cost of development's going up. The city taxation offices, property taxes have gone up. I literally, this just happened yesterday. I'm out in my driveway. I was picking up some stuff. A car pulls up in front of my house. This lady gets out, walks up the driveway, and she goes, hi, introduces herself. Are you the homeowner? Yes, I am. She goes, I'm from Stark County Tax Assessor's Office. I came by to ask you a few questions and take a picture of your house. I come from Arizona. That stuff never happened, but here it happens. So they're making sure they're getting every last dollar out of your property taxes. And I was like, go for it. It's not
That's
like
everybody's like, we have vinyl flooring in this entire thing. There's nothing to see in there.
It's falling down.
Exactly. The good thing is they didn't want to go in the house, which I probably wouldn't let them do anyways. But they, it's easy to see. But it was just an interesting experience. Never experienced that in 26 years. So, yeah. So.
So we're really curious about, so a couple things that go together. So at the beginning of the show, I made the comment that we feel like things shifted really fast.
They did.
And you said, I wasn't surprised to see it coming. I wasn't surprised to see it coming either, but a hell of a lot of people are surprised that this has happened. So talk about indicators that you watch for that indicate that a market's either going up or down. right? What did you see leading up to this that caused you to feel that we could go into a little bit of a recession? And what do you look for to know that things could upswing again if they ever do?
Yeah,
We're
so
still in an upswing. That's what's obnoxious, right?
everybody loves saving money, but they hate wasting money, and that's that feeling that everybody's had. Like, why am I paying this much for gas when umpteen months ago I was paying this? And what I saw in the marketplace, it started it literally started after the election. You could see the market starting to shift. You could see the cost of oil going up. So that automatically is going to it's going to trickle down to the pump, no matter whether we like it or not. And then when the president got in there and started making massive changes, I mean, somebody sits down and writes 46, signs 46. I just all of a sudden drew a blank. But gets in there and starts signing all of these different things that he wants to do into place, into law. That shifts a lot of stuff. We went from being energy dependent or independent to energy dependent again very quickly. That obviously flows. And then I was looking at the 10-year treasury yield, that was a byproduct of it as well. Start watching that last summer, and it really started to creep up. Not a lot, but you could see a movement going in.
The 10-year treasury to people who don't know what that is and how that affects mortgage interest rates.
Yeah, so the 10-year treasury note is typically used by Wall Street investors where they can park capital for long periods of time, and it's guaranteed by the government as a whole. And what they do is the government comes in and they raise a bunch of capital from Wall Street, and then they put it back out into mortgages. And so the return for the government is say they're guaranteeing Wall Street, say 3% on their money. So Wall Street's giving them billions of dollars, and the feds are turning around and putting it back out into mortgages. But that 3% that they're guaranteeing Wall Street, the government is arbitraging it and getting, say, 5% or, 5.75%, currently. So they're arbitraging that capital, which is basically means making a spread on it. So that's ultimately what's happening there. People don't realize that the federal government holds like $11 trillion in mortgages, residential mortgages. It's a huge number at the end of the day, but that's how the feds make their money too. And oftentimes they're not necessarily there to do what we think they're there to do. They have their own agenda at the end of the day. And so when that happens, it guarantees Wall Street X dollars return, the feds get theirs. There's a few folks in the middle that make a few dollars on it as well. And there are a lot of fat cats in DC. As a whole, we as consumers, homeowners, pick up that tab. Yeah.
So stop watching the Fed rate, start watching the 10-year treasury. So you were saying that that's a leading indicator that things could slow down a little bit by watching the 10-year treasury go up, meaning that mortgage rates would go up, which we know would slow things down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you see a big swing in cost of capital in anything, it's gonna impact, it slowing things down. Why you're not seeing it in the commercial space is because there's a huge demand. People are still buying cars. People are still, buying houses. They're still buying whatever it is they need to buy because those are habits. Those are, habitual, practices that they've gotten into. And they have to create new practices. Well, it takes time to create new practices. You can be as mad as you want about the gas prices, but you're still filling up the car because you'd rather drive it than push it at the end of the day. So it becomes one of those things for all of us. But yeah, but definitely watch the 10-year treasury. That's going to be your best indicator on what's happening. And know that just because it comes down doesn't mean there's an instant, say, shift in the mortgage. It takes, if it drops on a Monday, you won't see it until Friday, Thursday, Friday. You'll see it a couple days later.
How long do you feel like we're going to be in, I don't want to say this bubble, but it kind of seems like we're like in a weird time right now, obviously. How long do you think it's going to be until there's more stability from buyers, where more buyers decide they want to creep back into the market? Because right now we have a lot, at least in our market, a lot of instability from buyers, and fear, I think. How long do you think it's going to take for them to come back?
Some of the braver ones will be in here by the end of summer, early fall. But I would say to get a real, like a measurable indicator, is going to be after the first of the year, after the election. Yeah. The election is going to take center stage here very quickly in the next like 30 days. And that's going to grab everybody's attention. Of course, then everybody's going to get an opinion about it. Everybody's going to, fight on social media about who's the best, that kind of garbage. And then as a whole, that's people are going to sit and watch to see who actually gets reelected or who gets elected. And then that'll give them some level of comfort as to project what may happen next as a whole. So,
do you think a lot of buyers understand that and watch that, at least first-time home buyers? Because I don't know that they would consciously be doing that, in my opinion. I mean, I personally wouldn't know what to look for.
I don't think they understand it in a granular sense, but I think they understand it from an emotional perspective. That like I don't know why I don't want to go buy that dog, but I just don't want to go buy that dog type thing.
You're just waiting to see if somebody else buys the dog first and then they'll go buy the dog? Is that what it is?
Or if somebody else is going to get bit by the dog,
Right.
But the media, if the media comes out and says that all the dogs are bad, right?
Yeah.
Again, this isn't a political conversation, but this is reality. It's like fear herd mentality. Like 2 years ago, everybody was like, let's jump off the cliff and buy everything. And now they're like, whoa, climb back up the cliff and buy nothing.
Yes. Yeah. It's that like crazy swing shift. Like, I remember as a kid, parents saying, well, if Johnny jumped off a bridge, would you do it? That kind of thing. We've kind of forgotten about that, but we also almost live it to an extreme. Like things are extreme. And I also don't think from what I can tell, COVID has had a huge, huge mental impact on all age groups across the country and how they're processing things and how they're seeing things and how they're handling things, how they're managing things. There's a huge, because there's a huge lack of trust. There's people that don't trust the media, don't trust the government, but then there's people that do trust the media and do trust the government. So it becomes one of those things.
So in your opinion, what should we be telling our sellers right now? Like, we have a lot of people asking questions like, should we wait until springtime to list our house, first of the year? Should we sell it now and just take a big loss? Do we, as agents, figure out, what we think the house is worth right now with a CMA and then just say, okay, we know what we think it's worth. We should just go ahead and drop the price 40 grand because that's what it's going to sell for right now. What should we be telling sellers, and how do we keep the market going for us as a business in the meantime?
So I think the sellers that have the most motivation behind them are the ones that are making like life changes. So they're moving across country, they're doing this, they're doing that. If it's more of a want to versus a have to, as far as a seller is concerned, I think they're better off to wait. The market will level it out. You won't have the crazy ups and downs aspect of it. On the other side, the houses that are selling at really good prices.
Right.
There's not like any real fire sales going on that I'm seeing. And the ones that I do see that are fire sales, they're like auction houses, old crack houses, that kind of stuff that are going to take umpteen thousands of dollars to get back online. But if they can wait, I say wait. You're going to have more buyers, which is going to create another frenzy aspect. So you're going to go from a buyer's market, you're going to start moving more into what we call a balanced market. I wouldn't say it's going to be a seller's market, but I wouldn't say it's going to be a buyer's market. You're also going to be working with people that are just tired of waiting. They're like, all right, I'm done waiting. The election's over with. Let's roll. And it is what it is. And, kind of like the same thing that happened with gas prices. People kept thinking, oh, it's going to go down. It's going to go down. Well, it kept going up. And it's like, all right, we're still doing the family vacation. Load up the kids. Let's roll. Mm-hmm. And that became, what they did. So you have that, people have that ingrained behavior in them. We are all human beings, and human beings are funny characters at the end of the day. We all have a lot of ideas, but we also are we're creatures of habit as well. And that's what you're going to see. That's just me personally, what I'm seeing. I'm still seeing people buy houses around here. There's a new housing subdivision that's probably a half mile down the road that's being, they're carving out the streets.
Yeah.
Major national builder. And then another half mile down the road this way is another builder doing the same thing, carving up the land, chopping up the land, getting ready to build houses. Yeah. And they're not moving, by the way, they're not moving super fast at it either. But I don't know if that's a byproduct of lack of people to do the work, or if it's like, okay, let's slow the roll here and let's work into 2023, and we'll be ready to go in 2023. We don't need it in 2022. So, that kind of thing.
I think the other factor that, at least in my market, because we're so military focused and military driven here, we've got a lot of sellers that need to sell so that they can PCS somewhere else and either buy something or have enough money to, rent something decent off base.
Sure.
But I think that they're kind of waiting too to see, like, how much is our BAH, our base allowance for housing? It goes up every year, or it gets posted every year right at the beginning of the year. So I don't know that they're particularly looking at who's getting elected, but they are looking at how much am I going to get paid next year to be able to afford, the interest rate hike and still keep my quality of life. So I think that that's something that's definitely a factor, at least in our military driven markets like Colorado Springs is, that people don't necessarily always take into account. That's one of the reasons why we slow down quite a bit in fall. But until January, when we still have people that right now, our PCS season is completely messed up. We don't even have one anymore. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just, it's mayhem out there. It's chaos. We don't know who's moving or when. They don't even know. It's a mess. They're getting like 12 days notice, and we're just like, okay, cool. But I think that is an indicator that these people are just in so much flux, and they're controlling a big part of our market. And it's really hard to get a grasp on really what's happening from one day to the next until we can get some kind of normalcy on, where troops are moving and when. Like, that's a big factor for a lot of these cities that are surrounding these military bases.
Well, and you've got a commander in chief who's really not a military guy.
Right.
So, the military is kind of like, oh, you're back again.
Right.
Like, they're kind of a pain to him. And so he's not making them a priority, which creates more confusion, throughout the military, the branches of military.
Right.
At every level, leadership all the way down to the folks on the front lines type stuff. So, which
is why they're all dropping their retirement packet and retiring instead of staying in, when normally that would be what most people would do. So we have massive troop reduction.
Yeah.
That's a factor.
And that's what the current leadership wants. They want to reduce the military. They've never been a big fan of them anyways. But the thing to keep in mind, I think the best way to describe this current environment is that for the last 2 years, we've been driving we've been going at 100 miles an hour. And now we've gone from 100 miles an hour and we've slowed down to like 75 miles an hour. So it's still moving. It's still moving quite fast, but it almost feels like we're at a crawl. Like we're almost, it's like, I don't know if you ever, I'm a guy, so we drive cars fast. Like, that's one of my biggest things here in Canton. I was like, I got to learn to slow down.
No one in Ohio drives fast. In Ohio, if you go 5 over, you look like you're a race car driver. It's the funniest thing ever.
You do. Yeah. You absolutely do.
Yeah. My husband's family is from Dayton area. I'm like, why is everyone driving so slow?
I'm having to learn to drive slow. So it's one of those things. But it's that whole analogy where we've been going 100 miles an hour, all cylinders are firing, and now all of a sudden, we're slowing down to 75, and it almost feels like we're at a crawl.
Right.
And that's uncomfortable. And that's one of those things that it doesn't mean we're dying. It just means, hey, we're coming up to a turn. We need to slow down a little bit. The turn's going to be what the turn is, and we need to be able to navigate that turn intelligently and safely. And even in 2008, when we built a couple of different equity funds over the years, and we've got 2 running on Wall Street right now. But even the way I describe every economic situation is it's like being next to a small stream and you pick up a big rock and you throw it into the stream. It doesn't mean the water stops. It just means the water takes a different route around the rock. It finds a different way to keep moving downstream. And that's the same thing here. The money's not going away. It's just flowing differently. And so the folks that are embracing the change, and I said this to my wife and my kids, I said, the best thing to do right now is to get uncomfortable, is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. No matter where you're at economically speaking, it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit because it's an unknown or uncharted territory. Do I think we've got another 08 crash on our hands? Absolutely not. And this is one of the reasons I say we don't, and that is because where Americans are really good learners of their mistakes. Now we have a tendency to kind of repeat mistakes that look similar to old mistakes, but they're really different, but have similar characteristics. My point being is that this new generation, the younger generation, when they saw all the things that happened in 08 to their parents, they said, this is never going to happen to me. And a lot of them got into the fields of the gig economy, entrepreneurship, TikTok, all of these social media trends, and have figured out how to make $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month doing this. And they're doing quite well at it. Even when COVID hit and everybody got laid off, I knew a lot of people that got laid off, and they started their own businesses. They started their own gig. I had a friend that worked for Pfizer, or not, was it Pfizer? The knee people. I think it was Pfizer. But he actually started because they weren't doing surgeries they weren't doing knee and hip replacement surgeries. And he's on salary and all that kind of stuff. So he was less travel, all that. But he started something and was selling it on Etsy, and he was making like $4,000 or $5,000 a month selling this, like, I just call it a little copper pipe is all it was, but it was so like sanitize your hands from COVID. But he was making a ton of money in his garage, in his house in Arizona, in Chandler, Arizona. So people if there's a good percentage of our population that says, you know what, I'm not putting my trust in the government anymore. I'm going to take it on. I'm going to be responsible for myself. I'm going to figure out how to make this work. And that's what I'm seeing. The unemployment rates, they're saying, are going down. That doesn't mean people are going back to work. That just means unemployment's running out for people, and people took what they could get. But in the background, they were starting their own business, whatever it was that they were doing. Not that I'm necessarily in agreement with that stuff, but so you're not going to see that. Whereas in 08, what you saw six-figure earners losing jobs that they had over-leveraged their personal income, and they weren't able to replace it, or the job they were able to get went from, they were at 150 and now they're working for 50. And that caused all kinds of financial issues within the household. Hence houses, went into foreclosure. The other thing you had back then is you had property values dropping. We estimated in 08 that property values would drop right around 30%, which would have been the most in the history of our country when we put that model together. They actually got up into the high 30s and 40s and even to the 60% range in places like Las Vegas and Arizona and California and stuff like that. We were way off on our projections, way off. And but given history, we thought we were safe in all that. So I don't see that happening. I don't see property values dropping. I see home prices dropping, but I don't see property values dropping. And there's a big difference there.
Well, what's hilarious to me, though, is all the people for the last 2 to 3 years that have been saying everything's so overinflated. I'm not going to buy because everything is so overinflated. Well, this is the first break in 2 to 3 years in which you have seen, if finger quotes, if you believe it was overinflated, that overinflation come down, but they're not buying. Because they don't understand, that I guess what's happening with rates and how that affects them, and B, because they think it's that falling knife principle, like you said. They think that it's going to continue
Right. Yeah.
Right.
to come
They're
down.
locking it at 4%, and then in 2 months it's going to be 1% or some crap like that, and they're going to completely miss the wagon.
Yeah, or the house that's $400,000 is going to be worth $200 by December.
I don't see that happening in my lifetime ever again. I mean, and I'm 56. I mean, I estimate I'll probably live to my mid 90s or so. I don't see it happening like that ever again. That what happened in 08 was remnant of the 1930s crash. That's 50 years between 1930s and 08. So big difference. And I don't see it happening like that anymore. We have a global economy. It's not just a U.S. economy. It's a global economy, although we tend to kind of hedge a lot of that stuff here in the U.S. People are still consumers, so they're going to keep consuming things. They may consume it differently. They may spend their money a little bit differently, but that's gonna help some and hurt others. But it's not going to put people out of business as a whole. The idea that they're waiting for the market to drop, it's
dropping right now. Right now is the opportunity point. That's what I get. On the flip side, do you see it shooting way back up like what we saw the last 2 years, or do you think you'll ever see that in your lifetime again?
I think you'll see it go back up, but I don't think you're going to see it go back up like it just did. Like I think you're going to see the 10-year Treasury. It's going to come down to about a 2% region, like 2.10 or 2.10. That in that area. I don't think you're going to see it go down to zero like that. Like what happened during the last president's term, it was literally at zero. Mm-hmm. So there was no capital coming in from Wall Street. Nobody was investing in it. And the Feds and he, the last president, had no interest in working with Wall Street. He's like, I'm not taking your money. We got other ways to do this, so I'm not taking your money. And so he just didn't take the money to put it back out. But we also had a very strong economy, and home ownership was much more affordable. I think you're going to see rates are going to settle in the fours at the end of the day, and I think that's going to be pretty, normal. Whatever, for lack of better words, normal for the next 3 to 5 years, at least 3 years, maybe not 5, but I don't see it going way up. I think you're going to go back to a normal rate of appreciation in marketplaces, 3 to 5%, maybe a 7% if it's a hot area, maybe even 10% if it's a hot area. Obviously, new builds are going to keep getting a premium because of just the cost of materials, building materials, and the cost of land. And people like new stuff. I mean, they just do. I mean, we Americans, women like new things, men like new things. We get together, we're terrible, because we want to get new things together. Now we just go buy more new things. It's just the way it works. And I think more than anything, you have to look at human behavior over what the Feds are doing. Because I learned this years ago. So when all these people come up with all these AI programs, techie guys and what do you call it, the Facebooks of the world and stuff like that. They come up and they create an AI program. They put it out in the market. They think it's going to do one thing, but inevitably it always does something completely different than what they planned it for. Because once you and I start using it, we put our own stamp on it, our own behavior on it, and then it takes on that behavior. And it's something that they've never been able to program. And hence why we don't have the world full of robots, like they keep talking about, because they can't figure it out. They get close. There's some, basic things, but they can't get it to do what humans do because of just the way our brains work and how we do things very emotionally. There's a lot of emotional buyers, emotional eaters, that type of behavior that runs in us. So I don't see it. I think, I just don't see it. And there's no indicators. We're stomaching the blows as Americans. We're spending our money still.
That's the thing is, I have one last question for you, but before I ask that, which is, are we in a recession? And what is a recession for people who truly don't understand what that is? The White House put out this hilarious press release the other day about it. I was going to read out loud, but you
Yeah.
know, it feels very contradictory because it's like, oh my God, we're in a recession. The sky is falling. But then you go to the mall, you can't find a parking spot. Everyone's buying. You go out to a 5-star restaurant, you can't get a reservation. Everyone's out to dinner, right? The plastic surgeon's office is booked out 3 years in advance. The hair girl, you can't get an appointment, you know? So like, it feels really bizarre because it's like, are we in a recession or what? I mean, people are spending money.
Well, we're not in a recession. Now, the media is trying to define it as a recession. They're trying to get us to believe that we're in a recession. But to your point, you go to the mall, it's still packed. You go to, I mean, Chick-fil-A up the road here, it's like a 2-lane Chick-fil-A. You got to go around the building twice. I kid you not. I'm like, I've never seen this before. This is insane. Like 100 cars going around the building all
And
day
it's
long.
efficient. They should be running our government for real.
They should. I'd like to see that team of entrepreneurs run it. That'd be a nice, refreshing change.
So how do you define a recession?
Typically, a recession is 2 quarters of lower GDP.
Yeah, and tell us, everybody, what the GDP is, if they don't know what that means.
Well, the biggest way to describe it is it's basically a temporary economic decline in the marketplace, and it's tied to like industrial activity. It's also reduced generally by spending as a whole. It's also where I guess the easiest way to explain it is our U.S. productivity is down. That's the best way to explain it. 2 quarters in a row.
GDP stands for gross domestic product, for anybody who doesn't know what that means, right? So yeah, the White House put out this hilarious, what is a recession? While some maintain that 2 consecutive quarters of falling real GDP, gross domestic product, constitute a recession, that is neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of the business cycle. Based on this data, it is unlikely that even with the decline in GDP in the first quarter of 2022, even if followed by another GDP decline in the second quarter, indicates a recession. So I was kind of laughing at that. But like, are we in one? Are we not in one? Are we going to one? Does it even matter?
I don't know what it is.
Well, now, mind you, these are the same folks that are telling everybody that we're at a 9.1% inflation. And we're all looking around going, nah, there's no way. We're going to the grocery store. We're feeling the impact. What used to $100 used to get us like 7 bags of groceries. Now it gets us 4 bags of groceries type thing. We see it everywhere, and it's more than a 9% inflation, although they won't say that honestly. This is also coming from the same group of people that are trying to redefine words and how we use words and in all areas of life. So it's a programming method that they're trying to get people to adapt to, but Americans are much smarter than that. Americans are much more intelligent than that. And I guess the question we have to ask ourselves is, why are they doing this? And I think it's for a bigger picture. There's some folks behind the camera that we're not seeing. I don't know who those people are, but you can get into all those rabbit hole type conversations. Yeah. But as a whole, on the outside, just like AI technology, they're trying to program it to do one thing, and Americans are saying, no, we're not doing that. Now, I think if you get a different leader in there that's maybe a little bit more, I say, capitalist friendly, I think you're going to see prices come down as a whole. Current leadership's not capitalist friendly.
It's amazing to me that people don't understand that political policy affects economics. Yeah. People do not understand that the way that they vote affects their money or their wallet. And I think it's because, like you said, it's a slow roll, right? So it's not like I vote on Tuesday and then I see a change on Thursday. That can take years to change, right? But I mean, if you want to know where your money goes, look at how you vote. I mean, that's been true in this forever.
Yeah, it's very true. And it doesn't matter what side of the bird you're on, it affects the other side. So case in point, Joe's in there and it affects them as well. Those that voted for him are paying higher gas prices at the pump. They're paying more for ground beef. They're paying more for vegetables. They're paying more for soup, insurance, homeowner interest rates. It applies to them too. It's not just it's like, oh, well, we get what we want. You guys get to pay for it. No, it doesn't work that way.
Everybody pays for it.
Everybody pays for it. And I think, when I see it, I see Americans wising up to it. I mean, I remember as a kid being in school, and I remember this one teacher used to always impress upon us, the pen is mightier than the sword. Pay attention to this. The pen is mightier than the sword. Now, mind you, I went to elementary school back in the 70s, and they were saying this. And I graduated in the 80s. They were still saying this. I didn't really, put two and two together. I heard it, but it's like, yeah, okay, thanks. But now I'm seeing it more and more. You're seeing the media is very powerful, and they create a narrative that like changing the definition of words. We're not in an inflation. We're not this. We're in a recession. Raising the commercial lending rates is going to take us out of or it's going to slow down inflationary cost. It's not doing any of those things. So they're saying one thing and doing another. And as Americans, I think we're starting to wise up to that. I don't know that everybody's caught on, but I can guarantee you everybody sees it at the pump. Everybody sees it at the grocery store. And they may not necessarily connect the dots in its entirety, but they're definitely aware of it. Like they're
questions. Yeah. So last thing, and thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. So our National Association of Realtors says that out of its close to 2 million-ish members, 83% of them have been licensed 3 years or less, which means that 83% of agents working in this industry at this point have never seen a market in which a house doesn't sell in 72 hours, and they're making panic price reductions after a week on the market. They to sit on the market for 30 days is the sky falling. It's hilarious, but it's true. How should agents communicate to their clients right now? Like, what is the narrative that agents should be saying? Because I think Angela feels like too, the agents are very fearful, right? And so I think that affects the clients obviously too. So how do agents speak with confidence? Can they even be confident right now in what's happening? Like, what is the message that they should be delivering to the general public? It's okay, still buy, or, oh God, we're in a recession. Like, what should they say?
I think you have to, number one, start with whether you're representing a buyer or seller, start with what their why is. People want to do things to fill a why or a void or a dream or passion or direction. And so start with what that is and then cater to that. But also, continue to be transparent in the marketplace. Okay. Is it going to keep going down? Yeah, I guess you could say that some houses will sell for less than what they list, and some houses will sell for more than what they list. And that's still going to happen, especially if they list a house, $50,000 below market. You're going to get a bidding war that's going to bump it up a little bit. Maybe not as crazy as it was a year ago, but it's going to go up a little bit. At the end of the day, I think when you go into price houses, if you're representing a seller, I think you have to give them the high, the medium, and the low all at once, and say, this is, you listed at this price, it's going to sit a little bit. This one's going to sell a bit faster, and this one's going to sell really fast. Now, what fits your goals and your objectives as a whole? I think that's the best thing to do, is to continue to educate your clients, both the pros and the cons of the current marketplace. Yes, I mean, when I sold the house in Arizona, my biggest I guess regret, I don't even know if it's a regret, because I more than picked it up. And I look at houses, I look at real estate very different than what most people look at it as, was I gave up a 2.5% interest rate on that house. And I picked up a higher interest rate on the new house. But I also pulled out my equity at the top of the market, and I picked up a house with another 20% equity in it. So I'm way ahead on it as a whole. I think if you look at it from that perspective, it becomes a different conversation with people. I did a video the other day in regards to interest rates, and I've always believed this. It doesn't matter what your cost of capital is, meaning your interest rate on a property. All that matters is, will that property produce a return? And if it'll produce the return, whether it's an investment property or a private residence, which is, people say, well, it's a liability, it's a liability, it's a liability. I agree. It is a liability when it comes to your taxes and things like that. But I can tell you for sure that the house in Gilbert was an asset. I can tell you that for sure that the new house I'm in is an asset. I get paid to live in my house. And I've been doing that for 20 years. I get paid to live in every house that I buy. And I think coming at it from that perspective shows them, okay, yeah, I'm going to pay a little bit higher interest rate now. Can I refi down the road? Absolutely. I think rates they're going to level out. They're going to go back down a little bit, down into the 4s. I think it's where you're going to see them settle. So if you're buying at a 5.9% rate or whatever the rate is nowadays with a lender, then it's worthwhile to refi down the road.
But if you, on the reverse side, if you don't take this opportunity pocket
Right.
where prices are down
Mm-hmm.
a substantial amount right now in a lot of areas, and then refinance when rates come down, you're going to be buying again in a frenzy
Mm-hmm.
with a lower interest rate. It blows my mind. So it's like, let's pay $100,000 over asking at 4%,
Right.
or let's get the house for 50 below list at
Yes.
6% and then refinance when rates come down to 4%.
Exactly. I mean, if you, and that's a great way to think about it, because if you look at it, if I'm going to pay below, I'm going to pick it up below market. So I'm going to pick up some equity. Yeah, I'm going to pay a higher interest rate, but my higher interest rate is temporary.
Right.
But below equity is permanent. So the temporary aspect, okay.
Below equity is how you get upside down. Hi, hello. That's what happened in 2008, right? It wasn't because interest rates were high. You can change your interest rate if they come down.
Yeah, and I guess what I meant was that they're picking it up with equity. So they've got equity in the property, but they're paying a higher cost of capital. And I see rates going back down into the 4s. I do. Well, we see a 2.5% rate on a 30-year mortgage. Not for a while. I don't see that happening again, at least for a while. And I don't know what a while, how I would define that. But I think there's no better time than the current time to buy a house. I also think it's no better time than the current time to sell a house. And when I look at real estate and the stuff that we buy and the stuff that we own, there's no great time to do a bad deal, but there's no better time than currently to do a good deal. So if they've got a house and that house is what it is, whatever condition it is, like when we sold the house in Gilbert, it was pristine. It was a model home. That's why we got a premium on that property. We actually sold it for $200,000 more than our neighbor sold his house for 3 months earlier. So it was a turnkey deal, and the people that bought it, it was their forever home, as they said. This is our forever home. This is where we're retiring, and that's fine. But that's how I do real estate. But
that's the other thing that's nuts is real estate is a long-term hold.
Yes,
The average American stays in their house 5 to 7 years, and actually, I would imagine right now it's a little bit longer than that. So, why are we talking about what's going to happen in 3 months? That cycle where we went through in 2008, it took 4 years for values to start coming back up. So if you're not going to trade, right, people don't understand that that's what they're doing, right? If you're not going to trade your asset
right.
in a small amount of time, you will continue to weather the ups and downs, and you will gain appreciation or equity.
Yeah.
It's only a problem if you have to sell it next week.
Right.
That's the problem. We have people that are like, I've lived in this house for 9 months and I want to sell my house and move somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, well, now is probably not the time that you're going to see that massive return. You might still make a profit, but you're not making $150,000. That's not normal.
Well,
That's
yeah.
not normal. And you haven't done anything to the house.
And we
That's
told
your
them that for years. This is not normal. This is not normal. Did they listen?
No.
No, they don't. But you're absolutely, to your point, you're right on point, because the truth is, what happened for the last 2-3 years, we'll probably never experience that again in real estate. Just like that was the opposite of what happened in 2008. So here you had the pendulum go, all the way back across. So it went this way, now it's come back. So you're going to see a more leveling out aspect of it, which should be normal for buyers and sellers, which means that you're not going to see a huge buyer market last for very long, because people will start, it'll shift a little bit. Rates will come down a little bit. Inventory will be absorbed. You'll get back to normal inventory levels, which will start feeling familiar to people. And then people will start coming into, the buying and selling aspect of it. The days of doing what I just did, gone.
Right.
Like, I'll probably never do that again in my entire life. But I paid attention to it because I lived through the 2008 downturn. I'm going, okay, this is where the pendulum goes all the way up. I'm going to sell there and I'm going to come. But I have kids. I had to go buy another house. I could have rented, but then my money's not working for me.
Right.
And
It's bizarre. I feel like real estate is one of the weirdest products out there in the whole world, because I feel like it's basically one of the only things that doesn't have a fixed price, if that makes any sense. Like a gallon of milk, regardless of manufacturer or percentage or whatever, is round about the same. A car, based on trim level and what it does, is round about the same, right? Like houses can swing.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, like ridiculously. And I can't tell you how many times in my career people have said to me, what is the difference? And a lot of times it's an agent who believes in the product, right? And they price it higher and they sell it for higher, or an agent who doesn't believe in the product, and so they price it lower and sell it lower. But it's weird. Like that thought keeps going through my head. Like, what the hell is the value actually? Because I don't know what it was. And then we went like this, woo. And then now we're kind of like back down here. And are we, it's like the value on real estate is completely made up. Equity is monopoly money. If you are a seller, you're still sitting on a lottery ticket, right? I don't know if your lottery ticket will get higher in value or lower in value over the next 6 to 12 months, but that's why it's playing the market.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think, to answer your question as well, one of the things I think agents can do, especially listing agents, is they can create a very unique buying experience for buyers. And so how we achieved what we did when I sold the Gilbert home, or the Arizona home, was when we listed it in the marketplace, we didn't allow anybody to see the house.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't allow any. So it was coming soon on the MLS, and it sat there for a week, coming soon. We weren't doing anything. We weren't like trying to fix things up and touch up paint and all that other stuff. It was already done. And then we held an open house on a Saturday, and it was a very, I say, blocked time. It wasn't an all day open house. It was, I think it went from 10 to 12, and people had to sign up to see it for 15-minute intervals. And so people would come in and they'd be coming out, and the next family would be going in. And that's what they did all day long. And it created a buyer's frenzy. And this was in March of this year. Rates were already going up. The people that bought the house actually never saw the house before they bought it. Their agent saw the house and videotaped the whole thing. I guess they did see it through the videotape thing. But they ended up buying the house, but it created a frenzy. So you have to, if you can create a uniqueness around your product or your client's house, and create almost like there's only one of these and I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder type environment, then I think you'll still see people getting close to whatever their market value is. I don't think they're going to get over their market value unless it's a very unique property that has, I say, a turnkey aspect to it for a buyer. I think buyers are getting away from that, okay, I'll buy it and I'll remodel it environment. They're just not interested in. I think they're going to get away from that big time going forward.
I agree.
I'm going to close this by saying one thing.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before on the show. Actually, I just got this email while we were sitting here. Real Trends, which is basically the leader in data for real estate agents in the United States, just sent out an email that said that they have tracked the national realtors commission rate for 31 years starting in 1991.
Okay.
And it's interesting to note that after 4 solid years of declining commission rates, meaning the commission rate that a realtor was receiving for doing their job, in the first quarter of 2022, commission rates rose. And so we've talked about that a lot, right? And that is the good byproduct of a shift.
Yes.
When it's very easy to sell a home. A seller can do it themselves. A monkey can do it with 2 hands tied behind their back. Real estate agents are not worth, finger quotes, what they are to the consumer as much as they are right now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's good news in every market. There's opportunity out there, like we keep saying, and just stop panicking.
Yeah. Remove the fear from the conversation and serve the client. You know, whether you're a buyer's agent or a listing agent, serve the client at the highest level possible and just be transparent with them. And I know agents are, and, you know, there are laws and rules that make sure that they are and all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm sure there are people that break those things. But my point being is that the more that you can provide good quality data and information about a house and a neighborhood and a community type environment, the more educated the buyer or the seller becomes, which means that they're able to make a much healthier choice for their family at the end of the day. And that's really what it boils down to. That's how you serve your client at the highest level possible. And I know you ladies know that. I'm just saying it for the listeners out there. That, you know, that's where I think the agents that do that going forward are gonna thrive in the marketplace. They're gonna come out the other side even doing better, being stronger agents, better agents. The idea of having, you know, houses sell in 24 hours or before you put the sign up in the front yard, those days are gone. I guess the good part about that is those days were around in 06, in 05, and 07 era. And that led to a huge downturn in the marketplace, crash and burn for the U.S. marketplace. The flip side of that is those days are gone again, and they'll be back. They'll come back down the road somewhere, but we're not seeing a huge crash in our market as a whole. And the people that are out there cheering for the crash never lived through a crash, because it didn't just impact the real estate marketplace portion of it. It impacted lives. Like, people committed suicide over that stuff, and people were tossed out of their houses, and
families were ripped apart. I mean, yeah, that's a solid point. That's a great thing to cheer for.
You don't want to cheer that coming down the pipe again, because that's not a healthy environment. I mean, we ran a distressed asset fund during that time. We actually built it for that purpose, for the idea of home preservation and saving people from foreclosure. And we were buying mortgages. We still buy a lot of mortgages nowadays, and modifying them going forward, helping people. And this is before loan mods and short sales and all that stuff became popular in the marketplace. But the stories we used to hear and the stories we still hear today they're the same stories. It's just happening to a different person. And I think if people heard those stories, they wouldn't be so, excited or cheering.
Yeah, no, you're right. I never thought about it that way. That's really interesting though. So basically what you're doing is hoping that you're cheering for person A to lose their ass so that you can profit off of it.
Yeah, you're hoping your neighbor falls behind so you can buy his house. Pennies on the dollar. The same guy you're doing a barbecue with is the same guy you're hoping, defaults on his mortgage or loses his job, or his wife loses her job, and all of a sudden they become a one-income household and all that. That's when I hear people doing those things, and like, yeah, you're seeing a very small, picture.
Selfish. Yeah.
You're seeing one pixel on the TV that has 10,000 pixels, type thing. So,
well, Troy, this has been amazing. Thank you for educating us. We're going to close out. Hang with us for a few minutes, but everybody, we'll see you next Tuesday. I hope everybody learned a lot. We'll put Troy's contact information out there for everybody to have, but that was really great. Thanks for breaking down all those economic principles that are so confusing for everybody.
You're welcome.
Hang with us for a second. We'll see you guys next week.
5.
Angela and Lindsay would love to receive your real estate referrals in Colorado. Connect with the Homegirls on social media at The Real Homegirls Podcast.